Greetings, I am Pillar Nexus, the Ancient Gladiator, with more Scenario Nexus. This time we cover some war games of sorts, starting with War Chest. This is a game of having units represented with chips and having a bag, drawing them at random, deploying them to your starting control, and then trying to get out and control other spaces and fighting your opponent's units to take control and win the game. The game has expansions that add in fortifications, make those spaces harder to clear, and I want to say, what was it? Royal Decree cards for players to make use of. The game already provides scenarios in terms of setups inspired by famous battles that make use of the base game and their own expansion. So there's room to create scenarios involving both expansions. Have fortifications and royal decrees for extra chaos or extra challenge. Alternatively, or in addition to that, something else to have as an option is make a campaign of, okay, this side's going to have these units, the other side's going to have the other units, and depending on how things go determines which side has what units in the next battle, and probably figure out fortification and roll decree options as well. There's also the game can be played with two teams of two players as well, so it's entirely possible to have scenarios focused on that 2v2 system. So, what else can be done with this? I mean, really, it's just a matter of looking at what units to have work together and what royal decrees are going to be more effective or more creative with them. I don't know. This is still a game I need to play with others, but there's a lot of possibilities even with just the base game, and even more with the expansion. I really want to think about what are some other historical battles that can be represented with this system, and try those out. Probably gonna look on BGG later for this one. And then there's Warcraft. You'll play as the humans, the orcs, the night elves, or the undead, and you'll send out your workers to get resources and send out your units to take control of points and fight each other, trying to get to a point limit. The expansion also adds heroes with various levels. They get experience with their by fighting creeps on the various locations, and then there are cards to make use of their abilities. Both games have scenarios as extra things. Like the base game has the Elf Gate scenario, the World Tree. The expansion adds more stuff too. So what else can be done with Warcraft? There's a ton of map tiles. Creating your own scenario, just experimenting with the maps is its own thing. Alternatively, there's forcing a given faction to use a specific hero. Another possibility is adding in other conditions, like side objectives, like I believe March of the Elements and others. Or if you're feeling particularly bold, you might say for certain factions they're not allowed to use such and such cards and have to take them out of the deck before the start of the game. And as I've mentioned with War Chest, there's campaign. There's creating several scenarios, and then depending on how each one goes, determines the next scenario. And getting to the kind of end of your scenario line and winning lets you win the campaign. There might also be just specifically taking certain creeps and putting them in locations face up so that players absolutely have to fight them and win to win the game. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, especially with the expansion. I will never go back to base game Warcraft. I like the expansion. Although if you can find a second copy of the base game, another potential idea to do is to have two sets of the base game unit pieces, buildings, and workers. And having more units in play and creating this kind of massive epic battle that way. It's an option. I only consider that option because I got sent a copy that was not complete, and I wish they had told me it was complete before they sent it. So it was that. Yeah, just experiment with the maps. Experiment with the objective tokens they feature for the scenarios, and maybe think out a campaign. There's a lot of ideas to take from the PC game itself for scenarios. So there's Warcraft. And finally, we've got StarCraft, game where you'll play as one of a number of factions across the three main races: Terrans, Zerg, Protoss. You'll have units, bases, you'll have combat cards, technology cards to enhance your abilities. The expansion adds in leadership cards, new events, new worlds. The game is brought to a close by the event deck, and either the end draws near or hitting a certain number of points. The basic game doesn't feature any scenarios of its own, but the expansion offers 4 scenarios with items. In terms of coming up with scenarios for the game, presumably you could look to the classic game itself for ideas, or maybe do something like restrict certain buildings or certain technologies from being used, or restrict the event deck to certain cards if you're playing with few players. If you're playing with a full game of 6, it's hard to restrict the event deck because then there's not enough. But maybe playing with a restricted deck it'll make the game go faster, but it'll also be harder to get things going. The base game normally forced you to have the special victory leadership, as part of the what you got. It's entirely possible to just play only the special victory stuff and leave out the leadership cards as suggested by the game manual itself. What else can be done? I don't know. Just maybe have one player and everyone else has to fight them. There's also some team play rules as well. So you'd have like the two Terran factions team up against the two Zerg against the two Protoss, or you could have two teams of three. Have like one of each race against the other one. Or maybe just introduce a different objective outside of the points or the special victory conditions. And again, with the other war games, is the option to make a campaign and just play multiple games. Decide maybe like figure out certain planet setups ahead of time, and then give everyone random planets to have to choose from. So there's the three war games: War Chest, Warcraft, Starcraft. I don't know. Options for them are kind of hard for some of them. I mean, I like that Warcraft actually gives me more stuff to work with in terms of maps. The expansion for Starcraft adds more planets, which is really helpful. And it even actually has scenarios. And I like that all three of these feature scenarios, like war chests inspired by classic battles. Warcraft was cool to have scenarios in both the base and expansion. Starcraft actually had them for the expansion. But aside from that, I'm not sure what else to do with them. It seems like whenever I play games like these, it's just most people want to do the base game. For some reason, scenarios are really hard to sell. It's something I want to explore with my own game design, is figuring out scenarios for players to test out and see, is this going to tell an interesting story? Is this going to be fun? Is this going to be fairly balanced or not? It's just something to figure out on my end. But that is the Scenario Nexus episode number 2. It will be on to the 3rd episode next time. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.